Hi there, Roy here, and here we are again at activating the Sacral Chakra, session 2. So where we're going to begin here is a couple of things I want to talk through. Is tapping into our life force and beginning to recognize the difference between our surviving in it and our living in it. And again, that's recognizing the difference between our hurt story in it and our truth story. So that's what I want to tease out with you. So let's do a little recap, and then we'll recap all the way to that point, and then we'll start to tease it out. So if you remember last time, I was talking about our sacral chakra is about tapping into our life force, and that each chakra holds a personal truth and a universal truth. So when we attune to our life force, we come into the experience of feeling alive itself. So who are you when you're most present? Who are you when you're most alive and authentic in yourself? And that's your personal truth. Is the more you come into your aliveness and the more your inner space is feeling that experience of aliveness within you, it becomes fuller and fuller. And at one point is you get the beautiful experience of tapping into universal life itself. Is you start to feel the aliveness of the universe. And it's that eternal sense of life. And it's a beautiful experience. So you're not just alive, but you are life itself. And that's the personal truth, and then into the universal truth. Tapping into that is coming back to that source within ourselves, is connecting back into that place within ourselves where we're just attuned to our life force itself. And we're in the source experience. We're in the living moment of it. And that the more we attune ourselves to that is, again, we've got to do it with consciousness. So we've got to bring our consciousness to bear, and then we've got to bring our life force. We're looking to actually feel the living experience of that. And one of the practices we're going to do today at the end is as we sway, we open up the space and start to tap in and center ourselves in our life force, is to feel the momentum of that, the flow and sway of it, to feel the wave motion of life force moving through us and staying connected in that flow. So it allows us to be consciously in it, to be in the moment of it, and then also to be spontaneously in the moment of it. And we will looking to radiate it out, to expand it out more and more. And part of that challenge is we'll come into in the motion of it, is we'll come into the three basic tendencies that we'll experience in it. We'll experience the pleasure, the pain, and then that beautiful neutral state. Is holding our center in that is elementally important. So to hold open that space for us so that we can channel our experience in life and channel it through the living experience of it. That's the challenge. So let's have a chat about that. We spoke before about pain. When pain happens, pain is the experience of separation. So you break the skin, you break bone. Somebody who you're emotionally connected to says, "I don't love you." Somebody who you respect thinks they think you're stupid. As an example, is that disconnection is the experience of hurt, and that separation is when we get into that, and that hurts too much. Is we begin to struggle. We get into fight or flight. And as we get into the fight or flight, is our options are to run away, escape, or to stay and fight and be in the struggle of it. Or we can bury our heads and pretend as if nothing is happening. All of it's that struggle. And then in that struggle can create more suffering in itself. And a simple example is, I could hurt my arm and then I get over it and it goes away. Or I could hurt my arm and then I could worry for 20 years that I'm going to hurt my arm again. And that worry and the stress and anxiety of that is causes me more harm, more anxiety, more stress. It will make me make fearful choices. It will have me react more. So the stress and strain of that is far greater than the pain of the arm itself. Yeah. So now, how does that affect our life force? Well, if you can imagine that we're constantly trying to live, we're trying to get on with our lives, and that there's an anxiety pulling at us all the time. It can sort of fray the nerves. Is that nervous anxiety? Is if we're afraid, is we're going to always try and make the safe choice. And if we always make the safe choices, well, then while we may get a sense of safety in that, we can get to a point where we box ourselves into a place where we're not living anymore. Because elementally is being alive is a risk. There's a risk is the full cycle of life is birth and death. So the very fact that we're born is that death is there to happen at some time. And the risk of living is the risk of that death. But the risk of not living is playing it safe. And there can be many different types of death in a life before we find ourselves dead. So we can get caught in that state of suffering and fear, and it can basically paralyze us into not living. And we get into a place where we're surviving in ourselves rather than living. And then that's where the challenge to keep our life force engaged is, where's the balance in that? Where's the balance in that? Where's the balance between living and risking? But then there's where's the balance of taking the risk without consciously or purposefully going over our edge all the time? It is a risk to live. If we know the boundaries of ourselves, the limitations of ourselves, and the balance of ourselves, it can be a measured risk, and it allows us to still maintain the fullness of life, and we can be in the fearlessness of living, as opposed to if we don't understand the balance of things, if we don't understand our boundaries, if we don't understand where our ground is it's easy to become afraid. It's easy to start making choices or decisions or actions that push us beyond our boundary, and we start to collapse or fall over on ourselves. And in that, the risk seems more real, because the more mistakes we make, the more dangerous risks we find ourselves in, or situations we find ourselves in, it's only going to trigger more anxiety. So how do we find that balance to live fearlessly, but not to live recklessly, as opposed to living carelessly and living recklessly and then paying the consequences of that, or trying to live a safe life, and in living a safe life we shut down our life force so much that we're in a survival mode rather than actually living. So it's a hard one to play out. So let's have a look at how we might play that out, because it's important to be clear in ourselves with regard to risk to living. Because if we don't look at the risk of living, is we can very easily try to play the safe role, and again we inadvertently put ourselves in that state of survival. So now we're in a state of survival, and we're in the suffering of life rather than living the fullness of it. So let's describe it this way. You're in a corner. You're in a corner, and there's only one way out. And if you try all the options of fight or flight, they're not going to work. The struggle, they're not going to work. But let's have a look at them so we know what they are. You could try and fight your way out of the corner. That's not an option, because we're only attacking the thing we're afraid of. So it's only going to make it stronger. So again, we're still surviving in the fight. We try and escape but there's no escape. You can't get out of the corner by struggling. So we're not going to allow fear to take us out of the corner. So running away isn't an option, because the fight can still go on. You can have two people directly fighting each other, or one can be running away and the other is running after it. So it's a bit like we can run away, and then life will just keep following us. So there's no getting away from life. So running away from it is not an option. We can bury your head in the sand, and again, that's not an escape. Whatever is going on is still going on. Life is still going on. It's going to have to be faced at some point. And then attacking life again is attacking it. Again, there's a resistance in that. It's just struggle. So now, what are the options? What's the only true option is if we find ourselves stuck in a corner? What is it? We can't fight it out, we can't run away, and we can't bury our head in the sand. So what do? What's the option? It regards our life force and living, so that we don't feel like we're boxed in that corner and we're just trying to be safe and put ourselves in a safe place all the time. Well, part of what we're going to have to do is face life. Actually, going to have to face it. So if we're in the corner, we have to face whatever we're facing, and then we have to look directly at it. We can't look away. We can't pretend it's something else. We actually have to look at life itself. And then we have to look at what is life, what is the living experience, and then how do we step into that? And as we step into that, is how we get out of the corner, is we become bigger than the corner. Essentially, we become bigger than the corner, and in that, we're out of the corner. What do I mean by that? Well, let's talk about it in the body. Let's say the body is collapsing. The lower back is compressing. There's tightness in the muscles, there's compression in the joints. Maybe there's a bit of pressing on the nerves, so there's some nerve pain as well. And it hurts. We're struggling with it. We could try and take the medicine, behave as if it's not there. It'll come back. We can try and go and just attack our body in the gym. It's going to make it worse. We could just pretend that it's not there and we just try and get away from it. We're not getting away from it. So what's left? Okay, we're going to have to face it. We're actually going to have to look at our bodies. And then we're going to have to look at how do I connect into my body? How do I come into my body? How do I experience my body? How do I live in my body? And then as I live in my body, how do I create space? And that the more space I create is that I become bigger than the corner. So that the more I engage in my center, the more I engage in my center of gravity, the more I come into the root and rise effect, the yield, is that I start to open up the space between the joints, then the nerves are not getting that nerve pain. I begin to tone my trunk and work the lines of my force of my legs into my core, so that my core becomes more stronger, so it takes the weight off my lower back. So the lower back muscles can begin to release and lengthen while my trunk is shortening and toning. And I get that natural spontaneity of engagement in my body, is that I come into the being of my body. I come into the center of my body. I bring my body back to oneness. So that from that place of pain and suffering, is that I've had to actually look at my body and engage it rather than escape it. And then I've had to get into past the symptoms and get right into the cause. And really the cause of my body is that my body was lacking space. I needed to create the right space in my body. So that as I moved away from the compression of the spine and increased the tone and the trunk of my body, is that gave me the space, that tight space that I was in, that tight corner I was in my body where the pain was strong, is that I had to create more space, and I came out of the corner because I became greater than the corner. And that you do it mindfully, and then you do it with keeping the space open and getting into the energetics, getting into the life force. And then in that is I experienced the pain of it, I experienced the pleasure of it, and how do I experience both and treat them equally so that I can keep the space open for both. And that in that I open up the pathway from my pain to my pleasure. Is that something that was painful now becomes pleasurable, becomes pleasant. Is that I'm figuring out that pathway from pain to pleasure. And that I keep that pathway open so that I'm open to experiencing the fullness of my body. And the truth is, sometimes I feel pain, sometimes I feel pleasure. That is life. And it's very important that I actually continue to feel both. Because if I become numb to my pain, then I'm causing myself even more harm and I don't even realize it. So living in the openness of pain is elementally important and is part of our vitality. Now, I'm not talking about going around feeling pain all the time. looking for reasons to feel pain. That's not what I'm saying. Is that I'm open to, when I do experience pain, that I'm actually open to it. That I'm going to live through the experience of it, rather than try to escape it, and then I'm in the suffering of the pain, and then I'm in the survival of the pain. Is no, I want to live through the pain when it happens. And that if it becomes too uncomfortable and I brace or I struggle a little bit, is that I'm looking to ease off on that fear and struggle as quick as possible. That I can bring myself back into that pain. And then a beautiful thing is to get the pain moving, believe it or not. Let me explain this to you. I actually had chronic back pain when I started doing the postures in my early 20s. I started with chronic back pain. When I was about 15, I picked up two, 5-gallon, 10-gallon paints, tins of paint. They were big anyway. And then something went to my back. And I really hurt. I was in bed for a week or two, and it just sort of eased off. Never fully went away. Sort of eased off and sort of grew, and but it was always there, and progressively getting worse. By the time I was 21, I'd spent a couple of years in a very uncomfortable place where, those old biscuit tins. I'm probably showing my age now. The biscuit tins where they were tin, and then they warped very easily. At Christmas, you probably get biscuit tins at Christmas, and it warped, so you'd see the biscuit tin warped the moment you took it off once, So I used to lie flat on my back, and that's what my back reminded me of. Is when I'd lie on my back, I felt warped. I couldn't ground myself. I didn't have that place of rest. So I was in a tough situation, and I was in a gym, and 3-4 months into the gym I was getting personal training in it, because I needed to really figure this out. And I was just telling the personal trainers, this is making me worse. This is making it tighter. I'm even more uncomfortable now than I was before. And he said, well, maybe I could show you a bit of yoga, And I said, well, what is that, So he basically showed me the sun saluting relaxation. And I took to it like a duck to water. But my intention was, for my back, is damage limitation. And 21 years of age is just, Jesus, I've got the rest of my life to live. And I'm already have this, how can I live the rest of my life with this? Is just don't make it worse. So my whole intention was damage limitation. Healing wasn't in my mind, it's just damage limitation. Don't make it any worse, And then I just went out, did my yoga, and I got immediate bit of relief. It was amazing. And first 3-4 years of my practice, all I did was sun salutes and relaxation. Absolutely gorgeous, releasing and releasing and releasing. And I started to feel a greater ease in my body. And there's times when I'd have a lovely sense of release in my body, but the pain was always there, never properly fully released, until about 3 years into my practice. And one day, maybe 4 years into my practice, I'd started doing postures at this point. I was doing a bridge, and in the bridge, at one point, I got this big crack in my back, and it hurt like hell. I cried like a baby. And the reason why I cried like a baby is because one moment the pain was there, and then the next moment wasn't. It was gone. The pain just went. I had this enormous sense of relief. And while I knew there was a pain in my back and I was trying to figure it out, I didn't know exactly what it was I needed to do. And I was fumbling around. And then when that crack happened, is then I realized what I was looking for. And what happened was I opened up the space, and that I created a space for the pressure to come off my back. And I grew out of the corner. And what I had to do is with my practice, I actually had to face it. I had to look at this, and I really had to work it out. And I was feeling in the blind a lot, because it was my body. I took responsibility for. I had to try and figure this out. So very much feeling it out, and lots of back and forward in it. There's times when I get a great release, and then I do something to trigger it. So that moment was, I realized I was healing. I realized that I don't actually have to have this for the rest of my life. And it was amazing. It was amazing. But I had to hold that space in my body open, and I kept opening up the pathway and feeling it out. and again, moving through that sense of pain and pleasure, and just looking for that sweet spot where I could hold the space open so that I could stay releasing in that space. So I could very easily go and find that pain again if I wanted. Is all I've got to do is throw myself around the place carelessly, and again, it'll trigger it off pretty fast if I wanted to. I haven't had it in decades because I don't, but I hold that space open to experience and feel my pain and understand it and live it, rather than try to get away from it. And that's a dangerous place in the sense of I'm open to the risk of living, and in that risk of living is one of the risks is I could get hurt, and that is part of the risk of actually living. Now, there's also the risk of great joy, and amazing peaks of experiences in life. So there's that risk too, and that's wonderful. That can be a challenge at times. But there's that, it's accepting the risk that we may get hurt. We'll get hurt anyway at times. There's no ways of avoiding it. But the risk of living is we're accepting that we may get hurt. Is we may put ourselves in situations where we can feel the fear of things, and that we're facing the fear rather than being afraid of the fear. And that's part of living. And that's part of fearless living, is not to be afraid of our fear, but to be at peace with our fear. If I'm at peace with my fear is very close to me. My fear is intimately connected to me. My fear is communicating absolutely clearly to me. It's not something that I'm going around afraid of. It helps me recognize the boundaries of life. That's what my fear does for me. It tells me where, well, this seems like a safe place, but over there it doesn't look so safe, so that in a fearless way, I'll recognize that. So I'll be more mindful as I come to the edges. No different coming to the edge of your body is coming to the edge of situations where you go, well, after this is the unknown seems a little unsafe, but it's seeing that and seeing it with open eyes. So in that, it's very difficult to get trapped in a corner simply because you're always looking into the space. You're always looking into the open space. So even when there's the pain and the fear, it's still within an open space. It's only when we start to struggle, fight in the body, is when we fight in the body. Generally what we do is I've been banging on about this lately, is my little pet bug of end gaming, is when people end game in the postures, is that when they try to go as far as they can all the time. That's a form of escape. That's somebody trying to get somewhere where they're not. So here they are here, but I'll be in a safer place, or I'll be in a better place when I'm over there. When I attain that thing, then I'll feel more secure or more safe or more something. So I'm escaping to over there. I feel locked in. I'm attacking that boundary. I come to the edge of myself and then I attack myself. It's like attacking the door to get out of the room. Is trying to kick the door down by throwing myself into postures. And the question you have to ask is within the body, where are you going? In the sense of what, like the body is where you live. The body is where you're alive. And again, I'm not preaching that, I've had to learn that experience myself. I live in this body. I don't live in any other body. And I don't live in my body that's going to be tomorrow. I live in my body that's right now. And I'm in the living experience of that, as opposed to the fear or the painful experience of that. But I've had to work out fear and pain to be able to do that. So that's part of this conversation. So the end gaming is an expression of fear, and it causes more harm because it's overstretching muscles, it's compressing joints. It's only going to hurt more and more until injury happens. And then if somebody has enough injuries, then the lesson is learned. You can't really keep going down that road because your body won't let you, because it keeps getting hurt. So how many injuries do we need to experience? How much do we need to suffer before we realize that we don't want to fight anymore? We don't want to suffer anymore. So I don't want to be afraid anymore. I don't want to suffer in my pain anymore. So therefore I don't want to fight. Well, in that, then we need to come back to where we are. So we ground ourselves. So we ground ourselves in our life force, and we come into the feeling of our life force ourselves. And then part of our meditation is to just come into the feeling of aliveness, heighten our senses, and just hold it. And then hold our life force open for all things that come in. So in our body is to feel all the sensations in our body. What would happen if we allowed all the sensations in our body just to be sensations? Rather than trying to control them, we just allow them to be sensations. And in that, we focused on the body itself, and then centering the body, and then feeling the body, and then feeling the life force of the body, and then just sitting in the peace of that. And then as we gently move through our body, we'll start to notice the aches and pains and the pleasures. And as we do, we treat the aches and pains and the pleasures equally. What does that mean? We look at them the same. We give them our attention. What else does it mean? Is that we all want to be seen and felt. So we feel the sensations in our body. We feel our body. And we feel the pain, and we feel the pleasure, and we treat them both equally. We do not choose one over the other. That they're both part of the living experience of our body. And in that we can explore the space around our pain. We can explore how to create more space in our pain. So that as we move in micro movements, we can start to soothe the pain. When we move in a way that's massaging. So if you've got a sore muscle, we massage the muscle. If you've got a sore joint, you massage the joint. That you're looking to feel the pain and release it a little bit. Feel the pain and release it a little bit. Feel the pain and release it a little bit. But we have to feel it to release it. We have to see it to release it. So rather than being afraid, we look fearlessly, and we look to understand how to release the pain. So when we learn how to release the pain, that allows us to be much more in the living of our life force, and in the conscious living, knowing the risk of life. We may get hurt. That's the fact. Most likely, at some point, we will get hurt. Everybody does. But are we going to live in that, or are we going to try and survive and escape it? That's the choice. So, think about some pain that you may have in your body. And what would it take for you to figure it out? And if you figured out how to release one pain in your body, can you release another pain in your body? By the time you've released 2 pains in your body, you've most likely figured out how to release pain in your body. Do you understand? Now, we don't have to be so afraid of pain. We're not looking for it. We'll avoid it if we can. Of course, that's all makes sense. But it's not. Pain isn't going to, the potential of pain isn't going to get in the way of us living our lives, because we know how to release it. And that's the same on an emotional level or a mental level. How do you hold the space open at a physical level to let yourself feel everything you need to feel in the way that you need to feel it, so your body releases itself? Emotionally, how do you allow yourself to feel everything you emotionally feel, so you can let yourself just feel it and release it? How do you do that? And that you bring yourself back to the center of your energetic emotional body, which is feeling itself. Think about, first thing we do in our life force is we feel it. Then at an emotional level, the first thing we do with everything is we feel it first. And we might be feeling joy. We might be feeling sadness. We might be feeling angry. We might be feeling love. We could be feeling anything, but the first thing we're feeling is feeling itself, is our life force. If we struggle with what we're feeling, we can become emotional, like that fight or flight in the body. Is the fight or flight at an emotional level an emotional level is the emotions. It's emoting, it's the push and pull. So I might be feeling something, and then if that hurts at an emotional level, energetic level, then I struggle with it, and then I become emotional in it. So I could be sad, and then I'm emotional about it. I'm fighting it. So now I'm trying to feel sad and struggle with it at the same time. Or I'm happy and I'm grasping at it. I'm trying to control the happiness rather than just feel the happiness of it. And that's the struggle. So if we took the struggle out of it, it would allow us to just feel on an emotional level. And then that's the balance of it, is just allowing ourselves to feel whatever it is we need to feel in the way that we need to feel it. And in that is working out the hurt story, the struggle, and letting the struggle go. And then we see the pain of it, and then allowing ourselves just to feel what we need to feel. If it's grief, is allowing ourselves to feel the grief and live the grief. That's the fullness of it. We're not less in that, we're more in that. It's authentic in us. So now we're feeling the grief of something, and it's authentic in us. That's part of our living experience. If we try to force the grief down, it's our head is in the sand. The grief hasn't gone anywhere. If anything, it's working away, bubbling away underneath us, and it'll come out in other ways. So allowing us to feel it and not resist it, and feel the hurt of it, and be in the connection of it, is we're bringing ourselves from our hurt story to our truth story, the oneness of it, the connection of it, is we feel the purpose and meaning of it. And that makes us more. Equally, at a mental level, is we're in the vibrancy of our mind. We're in the radiance of our mind. We're in the fullness of living our mind, living our thoughts. What would happen if we gave ourselves enough space to think about whatever it is we need to think about in the way that we need to think about it? That you gave all your thoughts the space to figure themselves out. Give your thoughts the space to untie their own knots, so that the thoughts can begin to understand themselves, so that we can take the struggle out of them, and that we can maybe understand the hurt of them. And then what is it that we need to learn that allows us to return back to that place of connection within ourselves? So what is the insight we need to experience that brings us back to that authentic experience within? A simple example, I'll ask it this way, I love asking this. Do you know your pain tolerance? And again, I ask this in teacher training all the time. Everyone puts their hand up. Yeah, I know my pain tolerance. You know, people like to brag about how much pain tolerance they can take. You know, take a lot. You know, and then I'll ask, well, okay, that's great. So, what about your pleasure tolerance? Who knows their pleasure tolerance? Half the hands go up. If even half the hands go up. Is so many people don't realize that they have a pleasure tolerance. There's only so much they can feel. There's only so well they can allow themselves to feel before it's too intense, it's too much. It gets uncomfortable. So they block it. They limit it. Does that make sense? So do you know your pleasure tolerance? And if you think about your ability, your vibrancy of life, your ability to live and to feel the living experience of life, is if you have a high pain threshold and you have a high pleasure threshold, your ability to take pleasure and pain and stay grounded in them is, you could nearly describe, that's the vitality, that's the aliveness of your life. That's where you're in the fullness of it. And if you go beyond those, that's when you slip into the struggling, into the suffering of life. So if there's too much pain in your life and you're struggling with it, you go into the struggle. You're not living it anymore. You're in the struggle. Where equally with the pleasure, a lot of people don't realize this, is that they only allow themselves to feel so good, and then if it gets better than that, people start to sabotage it. They start to pull it down, and in that, then they're struggling. So they won't allow them, and they're trying to make themselves feel better and better. You know, I'll give you an example. Somebody is living their dream life. They've gotten all the things they've asked for in life, but yet they're still not happy. They still. Why aren't I happy about this? Why aren't I peaceful in this? It's because they've got all the things in life, but their ability to actually feel the pleasure and the joy of life is limited. So no matter how good it is, they can't seem to get past that boundary. So how do you expand them out? If you understand what I mean. Equally, if they're imbalanced, is you could have somebody with a high pain threshold and a low pleasure threshold. And that person feels more alive in the suffering. When they're around the suffering, they feel most alive. And they have a tendency to be very helpful in it. Is that the more suffering's around, it activates them. It brings them into their life force, makes them feel more alive when they're helping other people. Okay, but when there's a party on or a celebration, they become a wallflower, because when everybody's able to really let loose and celebrate, they'll sit back quietly and they'll only go to the limit of how well they allow themselves to feel. Or you can have the person who has a high pleasure threshold but a low pain threshold. And a superficial way to describe that is a fair weather friend. Somebody who is around when the times are good, but when the times are bad, they're not available. And again, we can depending on our state of mind, sometimes we can be I've got a lot of pain threshold, and we're into suffering and it makes us feel good. Sometimes we're the fair weather friend. When it's good, we're there, but then if you look through the consistency of our lives, being up and down and around all over the place, that in itself becomes a struggling state. What would happen if you understood pain, so you had a high pain threshold? You also understood pleasure, so you had a high pleasure threshold, and that you can hold both and hold your center. Then you would be allowing yourself to feel the fullness of your own experience in life, the fullness of yourself, if you understand what I mean. And that's part of the challenge of holding those tendencies of pleasure and pain and being able to hold them both open and treat them both equally. So think about what I said there, is whether it's pleasure or pain, you give them both your attention. Whether it's pleasure or pain, you feel both. And that you keep the space open. And you allow the pleasure and pain to express itself, and that as it's leaving, you allow it to leave. So that you're able to channel your experience, and you're feeling those three basic experiences: pleasure, pain, and then calmness. Nice neutral space. Okay? So we talked a little bit about the pain and how to feel it, and how to feel it without attacking it. So you're feeling the edges of it. If it's an emotional thing, you're feeling the edges of it. If it's a thought, you're allowing yourself to play the thought out at the edges. And the more you hold the space open, the more you communicate your thoughts or your emotionally what you're feeling or feeling in your body, and as you do, you're also softening into it. You're holding the space open and you're not attacking. So therefore the space is open. Within that, you're holding the space open, you're contained, but it's a bit like holding a baby. Think about the support you have for a baby. You hold the baby firm enough that the baby feels absolutely secure. But you're also soft enough to give the baby all the space it needs to breathe and be in itself. That it feels secure and contained and safe. So you're the one that's holding the safe place for yourself. You're the one that's containing it, but also being soft in it. So while you're engaging with your body, you're working the root and rise, you're containing your space, you're also feeling the pain in micro movements, and then you're releasing. So you're working like a massage, and you're working the pain out of you. You're looking at how to release the tension in the muscle. You're looking at how to release the tightness in the joint. You're looking at how to take the pressure off the nervous system, central nervous system. So no, that's no different at an emotional and a mental level. Now, what about the pleasure? What about the pleasure? What's it like? We talked last week a little about the metaphor, the sex metaphor, and I think I'll tell the full story of that on the next session. Because it's the next part of the story. But for now, think about what happens when we get turned on. All the senses heighten. Our sense of touch, our sense of smell, or what we hear, what we see, what we feel, is that all our senses heighten. And literally our life forces just come up. Now, if we take the sex part out of it, it's our life force. And we're tapping into our living experience, tapping into our drive. Does that make sense? And we're feeling it. Now, what happens in foreplay? This foreplay is, again, think about what the movements are like, the sense of touch, the pressure, the engaged sensitivity of it. So now think about that in a muscle when you're working at the pain. It's that sensitivity of opening up the space and feeling the sensitivity of it. Now, I'll bring one more thing into that today, is the intimacy of it. Is what's it like to feel the intimacy of your body? And again, this is not about sex. This is about the intimacy of feeling one's body. The intimacy of feeling one's emotions, one's energetic body. The intimacy of being with one's thoughts and being with them with awareness. There's an experience of intimacy itself. What does that feel like? What's that like? And again, some people might be comfortable with that. Other people might be a little bit uncomfortable. And the reason being is it can create its own sense of self-consciousness. It's that comfort of being in one's body and at ease, of being in oneself and at ease. And if we're not used to that, if we haven't found that place within us, it can feel a little bit self-conscious or not so comfortable. So think about this. What would happen if you lay down in your body and you relaxed and you brought yourself to your natural place of rest? Like you do in your sleep, but you did it consciously. You just came and you relaxed in yoga nidra, conscious sleep, and you just came to that beautiful connection where your body connects into the floor, you connect into your body, and you just find that natural place of rest. And it's a beautiful connection. That connection is the intimacy of the body. You're merging into the body. You're coming into the embodiment of yourself. You're in your body. And that connection is what intimacy is the intimacy of that. Now think about when you activate your life force and you just feel all your senses heightened and you get that beautiful sense of feeling itself. That your life force is the first thing that you feel. And then just allow yourself to feel that and then be completely in it. You're connecting to your life force. You're coming into the intimacy of it. It's beautiful. Also, that's going to bring you into the intimacy of your awareness. That what you're within is you're completely in the silence, or the clarity is the watcher. It was the listeners, the silence, but it's the intimacy of it. The feel or the intimacy. Even the smell and the taste, you're in the intimacy of that. And you're coming into the intimacy of your consciousness itself. So now you're truly in awareness and watching. You're truly there. You're in the living experience of your life force, and you're in the physicalness of it in your body. And now there is the sensations that you experience. And the three basic ones are pleasure, pain, and then just being neutral. If we were a child and we were experiencing those, the pleasure, make us smile, make us laugh, the pain is going to make us cry, or in the calmness, the baby just sits there and just is totally receptive, just in a state of absorption. They're the three basic states. What if we allowed ourselves to do that at an energetic, emotional level? You came into yourself and you just started to practice smiling. It's a physiological thing. It feels nice. At an emotional, energetic level, it makes us feel nice. It's a nice feeling. Is at a mental level, it's like it makes the mind, the awareness, sparkle a little bit. It's a really nice thing. You see people's eyes when they smile. Is that smile in the eye? That's the consciousness itself. If we practice that, just as a baseline experience of how we experience aliveness in ourselves, is the pleasure of it. Now there's the pain of it. Is what would happen if we allowed ourselves to cry, the willingness to cry. And again, I can hear some people have no problem with that. Although some people might have a problem with the smiling, Let me acknowledge that. I smile pretty easily, so I've got to be mindful is that willingness to smile might be a real challenge for some people. It's like, Roy, that's really intimate. It's a real, it's like I'm revealing myself when I do that. I'm not used to smiling and smiling openly, because you get right to the core of yourself in that. And then crying is, I know some people who cry at the drop of a hat. I cry at the drop of a hat. I cry way too easy. Well, not way too easy. I enjoy it. I actually really like it. Look, I'm starting to tear up a little bit here. I actually really enjoy crying. I love the physicalness of crying. I love the feeling of it. In my mind, I love the release of it, because that's essentially what smiling, laughing, and crying does. It's a release. That's what I experience it as. And it allows me to feel the pleasure and the pain, and it allows me to release it. So when I'm hurt, I cry. When I feel joy, I smile. And the ability to have access to those three basic states and calmness. Sometimes Mihaela teases me because I have such a straight face at times. Because I'll go for a very long period of time with no basic expression on my face, because I'm just totally in the neutral. I'm just totally in a neutral state of feeling. It's a beautiful place to focus on and engage in something. So if I'm doing my work, I'll be there for an hour or two. I'm totally in the thing I'm in, but in as an expression, because I'm in a completely neutral space. It's really, really nice. But in an instant, I could laugh or I could cry, but I'm in the willingness of that, if that makes sense. And in that it's very freeing. Now, what if I asked you to start practice, just sitting in that life force, feeling your life force, and sit in the calmness of it. Now, sit in your life force and feel the pleasure of it. And when you feel the pleasure of it, begin to smile. Let it out. Let it smile. When you're in the suffering or the hurt of it, let it cry out. Let it tear out. Now, think about the many different ways we can smile. Crying has many different ways of crying. There can be the real face cruncher, let it all out like that. Oh, get the throat going. There can be the whole 9 yards, all the waterworks. Or it could be a glassy eye. Or literally, it's not so much a physical thing, but it's more an emotional or a mental thing, where we just feel the sadness or the hurt of something, and then we just let ourselves feel the release of it, so that we're not actually fighting it, and that we allowed ourselves to be in those three basic states within our life force, and we allowed ourselves to move fluidly through them. Now, it doesn't mean that you walk around crying a lot and smiling a lot, but you have the freedom for it. And if you have the freedom, you're most likely going to smile, because you can smile in the hurt of things and you can smile in the pleasure of things, because you're living the fullness of them. Okay, now what do I mean by that? Is how do you experience permanent joy? So you can have temporary joy and you can have permanent joy. So if you think about temporary joy is I'll eat an ice cream. Yay! I'm eating the ice cream. It's making me feel good, and then the moment I finish it, I start to feel guilty. So now I'm in the suffering of eating the ice cream. But there's things that last for a small amount of time and then they go away. Yeah. Now how do you experience permanent joy? Well, what would happen if you treated the pleasure and the pain equally? You didn't treat one better or worse than the other. They're two sides of the one coin. So that it literally, if I said to you this way, you have a son and a daughter. Which one do you prefer? You wouldn't choose. You couldn't choose. Does that make sense? And sometimes the son can be behaving, the daughter's misbehaving, the daughter's behaving, the son's misbehaving. They're two sides of the one coin. And sometimes life is painful and it's pleasurable. So we all like a little bit of pain, actually. And it's quite a nice thing. And sometimes, life is very pleasurable, but too much of it can sort of hurt a little bit. So there's a very thin line between pleasure and pain. They're two basic sensations we experience in life that allows us to feel the aliveness of it. But if we treated them equally, is what would happen is that would allow us to hold our center, to hold the one space and be constant in our life force in the one space. And that we're not getting caught up in the attachments. Because if we get caught up in attaching our life force to things all the time, well, we'll attach it to the things we like. And then we'll also attach it to the things we don't like. And how does that work? Is that, remember that the emotion, the emoting, the grasping, is I'm pushing and pulling, is I like that, so I attach to that and I try to pull that towards me. So I'm trying to hold on to my feeling happiness, okay? Now I'm also pushing that sadness away, but I'm actually pushing it away. So now I'm using my life force to connect to the sadness, and then I'm trying to push it away. So as I push it away, I just make the thing I'm pushing away stronger. It's like it sticks to me. So it's just like you can't get rid of the sadness because I'm actually paying attention to it. I'm actually connecting to it. And then I'm trying to tell myself, go away from that sadness. Well, yet I'm attached to it. So when we attach to the pleasure and pain and then we struggle in it, is we spend more time in the struggle and more energy in the struggle rather than allowing ourselves just to feel it. Where when we don't get so attached to the pleasure and pain, it's because we treat them both equally. So I'm not choosing one over another. So when one comes in, I will give it the same attention. I will give it the same energy. I want to see it. I want to understand it. I want to feel it. I want to know the truth of it. And in that, the more I hold my center within that, is I can hold that one constant. And I can be in that constant joy of that rather than the temporary joy. So that even in the pleasure and the pain, the more I understand that, the more I can be authentic in it, the more I am in that. And there is wonderful joy in that. There's wonderful purpose and meaning. And that's a very joyous thing. So that if I'm truly sad, I'm truly sad. I'm going to live that with the fullness of my being. My life force is going to be that thing as I'm in it. Okay, I'm not very good now when I'm angry, because when I'm angry, it's like I'm all in that too. But I'm like a child. I can be in it and out of it just as fast. Because I'm willing to live the fullness of my humanity. And the challenge is to be in things but not cause harm in them. So is it possible to feel anger without actually causing any harm? Yes, there is. You can just feel it. You can be in the state of it. It's a communication. What is it communicating? Normally anger is communicating boundaries. So what is the boundary that's being communicated? And the more you communicate that, you can let go of the life of it, the charge of it, and then you let it go, and then that's it. It's over. Where is being in the anger of something and then using that to hit somebody over the head, or using it to hit yourself over the head, well, now we're causing harm. And then in that I'm going to get hurt, or I'm going to hurt somebody, and in that I will struggle. But if I'm in the authenticity of it and I'm not causing any harm, then what's the problem? I'm living my humanity. I'm living the fullness of it. Okay, so how do we do that? Because I'm not basically saying to you now, hey, let all your anger out. That's not what I'm saying. Is that as you hold your space and you sit in your life force and you're just feeling yourself, and you're feeling yourself with awareness, you're going to experience three basic things: pleasure, pain, and this lovely calmness within. To find the balance is to be able to experience all three and to stay in the one space with them. And in that, what happens is you bind those two energies. You bind the positive and the negative energy together. And I remember a friend of mine years ago, Stuart. He described me really well at the stage I was at. And what I was basically doing is that I was taking the positive and the negative charge in me, and I was bringing them into the one place, and I refused to let them separate. So when you have two magnets that they don't want to go together, and you have to really put an awful lot of forced into them to hold the two magnets together. That's the place I was in, because I knew what I needed to do. So I was really building my ability to hold my center. So he could really feel it off me. He was like, your will, you're holding them together. That's right, I am. Is that I'm determined to figure this out, and how I figured it out is rather than forcing them together, I found the softer I was within them. Is that my softness is the power, not my hardness. So that as I feel the tone in my body, when I soften into that tone, I merge into the muscle, I merge into my body, and I'm softening into my power. So that I'm empowering myself by coming into the tone, by softening into it, by merging. It's meditation. Anything you merge into is you're meditating into. So I found that when I could feel the two opposites, when I merged into both of them, they both came together. So that when I merged my pleasure, my pain, when I treated them equally and merged into both, is they came together. And then you start to bind those energies together. And that's very, very powerful. So rather than having those two tendencies pull off in different directions or go off in all different types of directions, you're able to bind them together. And what it does is that it makes your channel within very, very powerful, because it's your ability to have your energy swirl around your center, keep binding to your center, so that your life force is getting greater and greater and greater. And it's your ability to feel the pleasure and the pain and hold your center with it. It's your ability to feel the pleasure and the pain and not struggle with it. So you're letting go of the hurt story. Is you're letting go of the hurt, and that you're moving into the oneness of them. You're binding them all together into one state, into one place, into one channel. And then you're channeling that. So you're rooting it down, and then you rise it up, and then energy rises up. Your life force starts to rise up through you. You're taking your sacral energy and you're transmuting it through the rest of your life, so that you're in your life force. A nice way to say it. I walk around turned on all the time. Okay, and very much like that sexual energy of being turned on is that moment of what it feels like. Now take the sex out of it. It's that feeling of turned on. It's that switched on feeling. It's that heightened state of awareness. Is I walk around with that switch on all the time. And again, it's not the sexual energy, it's my sacral energy. And that I walk around with my life force switched on. That's what I do. Now I don't walk around with charging it up, and I'm not walking around with it charged up all the time, but I walk around with it on all the time. And then a nice way to describe it, it's like a hum. It's like a humming sensation. It's like a vibrational sensation. Is that when you start to feel it move through you, it's like a sense of radiance. Your life force is radiating from you, because I have it switched on. Now, if you think about it, I need a battery to do that. I need like a dynamo within me to do that. And it's the ability to bind the three tendencies together, the three energies together, creates that ability to leave the channel on all the time, so that you stay switched on and you're staying in your life force. It's like being constantly in the moment. Is if you go around trying to focus on the moment all the time, it's exhausting. But if you realize that your consciousness is perpetually in the moment, it's in the stillness of it. The more you soften into the stillness of your consciousness, you'll find yourself perpetually in the moment, but it's effortlessly in the moment. So now let me ask a question. Is we talked before about the drive of life. Is how driven is it? It's really driven. It's actually relentless. And if we don't go with it, is it just rolls over us. Does that make sense? It's going to keep going. So we got to go with it. Is if we try to play safe, we'll just feel like life just keeps overtaking us all the time. We'll feel like life is battering us. Life is affecting us rather than we affecting ourselves. Is we get battered around by life. That's what it feels like. In the survival mode, is it feels like we're being dominated by the things that happen. Is life outside of us is controlling life inside of us. We're in that survival mode. Now, if you center yourself in your life force and you hold your life force open and you engage with those three tendencies, the positive, the negative, the neutral, the pleasure, the pain, and then the calmness, and you learn how to treat them equally, what you're doing is you're binding them together. It took me ages to figure out how to soften into them. I didn't realize I had to soften in. I was holding them together, until I realized stop fighting, and then the whole thing changed. But that's, to be honest, that's the way to learn it when nobody's telling you how to do it. That's the way you figure it out. But if somebody's explaining how you do it, it's now look, it's your holding them together, and it's the way you hold them together brings them together more powerfully. And what you're doing is you're holding the charge of your life force, the radiance of it. And once you get used to leaving it on, then it's just like a trickle all the time, and it just permeates. So your sense of touch, you're always in the living sense of touch in your body. You're in the living experience of what you see. You're not searching. You're living the experience of what you see in front of you. You're living the experience of what you hear. I'm not going around, hearing it. I'm not going around searching for particular sounds. I just hear what's in front of me, and I'm in the spontaneity of it, the livingness of it, the life of it. Does that make sense? What I smell, what I taste, it's just a full living experience. Now that sounds exhausting if you weren't softening into it. Because when you soften into it, then you are that thing, you are in that, and then it's the radiance of it. So it's the ability to soften in gives us that lovely merging effect. And again, that's the spontaneity of being in our center of gravity. We feel the natural tone of the muscles, and then we're softening in, and it's that softening in that allows us to stay in it and feel the vibrancy. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So now the more you do that, is the part of the challenge then is that we sort of begin to need to, how can I say it? Is you got to take it through your body. So you take your sacral, your life force, and then you bring it up through your spine. You want to bring it down your body. You want to bring it all the way down through your legs to your feet. You want to bring it all the way through your arms. You want to bring it all the way through your body. So you want to open up all your body. So the lines of force we talked about before is you want to feel the life force all the way through them. You want to feel the life force all the way through all your lines of force, all the way through your body. You want to feel the full vibrancy and radiance of your body. You want to feel it at an energetic level. So it's the feeling of it at an energetic level. And then it's the feeling of it at an emotional level. So while you're clearing all the suffering and pain out of your body, you can come into the living of it. As you're clearing out all the suffering and pain at an emotional level, you can just live the vibrancy of it. As you're clearing all the suffering and pain out of your mind, out of your thoughts, and out of your psyche, you're coming into the living of it. And that's a process. You got to tease out that process. So you're holding your space, okay, and you're letting things in, okay, and as you're letting things in, you're holding your life force up. A really nice way to describe it. This is a lovely image I have in my own mind of it. This is what it feels like for me. Yeah? It's like when I'm holding my inner space. I'm in my inner space and I'm holding it open. It's like I'm in a room and that I'm sitting in a chair in a room, very comfortable chair in a room where I'm at ease, I can focus. And there's a beautiful fire, beautiful heart and a beautiful fire in the room. And it's really very simple. Whoever comes into the room gets my attention and gets the heat. And they take whatever heat they need from the fire. And they take whatever attention they need. There's only one simple rule, is that no fighting. There's no fighting. In this room, there's no fighting. I will not fight, and I will not accept fighting. It's the only rule. So if some part of me comes in and it's in the hurt too much and it's in the struggle and it wants to attack, I won't fight back. So if some part of me wants to come in and scream and shout, okay, come on in and scream and shout, but I just won't scream and shout back with you. I want to hear you, I want to listen, I want to feel, I want to understand. And then when the screaming and the shouting calms down, then the real communication comes in. So That's the very simple rule of it. There's no fighting. And in that, what you're looking to do is experience the fullness of yourself and then feel the fullness of that living experience. The only thing we don't do is fight in it. So we're committing to put the struggle down. We're committing to listening to our hurt story, to feel our hurt story, so we can understand how to put the suffering down in it. And then to put the hurt down in it. Learn what we need to learn, grow in what we need to grow into, to connect that beautiful oneness within ourselves. How can I consciously awaken another part of myself to live the authenticity of myself consciously? And how do we do that? And to do it with the full vibrancy and radiance of the full living of that experience. And then there is the humanity of me. There is the humanity of all of us, is to live the human experience. And at the same time, as we sit into the being of ourselves, is that being of ourselves is the boundlessness of ourselves. There's that self that is constant. That self that cannot be affected by this life. So when I come into the pure consciousness of myself, that consciousness of being, I'm in the being of it. It is not affected by the doing of my life. So I can be in the humanity of my experience, and I'm in the looking to live the fullness of that. And also I can be in the being of myself. And the being is the perfection of ourselves. Is that part of us where pure consciousness itself, it's in its perfect state. And that's the being of it. There's no I there. There's just being. And we are both the human experience, and we are also on the doing of that, and then we are also on the living of it, and then we're also the consciousness and the consciousness of being within. When we find that true center within ourselves, we are that too. So I'm not just in the moment, I am the moment. I'm not just alive, I'm life itself. And that we can experience both of those, and they do not need to contradict each other. Is one part of life is not perfect, and the other part of life is perfect. And to be honest, the fullness of life is the perfection and the imperfection of it. And that there does not need to be a contradiction in that. So now is holding the pleasure and the pain. And again, they do not need to contradict each other. They do not need to be separate from the one experience. Is that we can hold that center of it within ourselves and then live the fullness of that, if that makes sense. So let's do a little bit of practice. Okay. So what I want you to do is get comfortable. I'll talk you through this now. Yeah. Get comfortable. Get in a nice comfortable position where you're sitting on your sit bones. And I want you to be fully supported, where your legs are comfortable, your hips are comfortable, your pelvis is stable. So you're sitting on the sit bones and you're free to sit nice and easy in your spine. And then just allow your hands to rest on your legs, anywhere that's comfortable. You can put your index finger and thumb touching if you want, palms down or palms up. Just make sure your hands are in a position that allow the shoulders to relax. And then what I want you to do is just gently close your eyes. And then I want you to do a quick body scan. Make any adjustments you feel you need to do. And then in that, get a sense of your body and where your body is in the room you're in. And then I want you to begin to breathe a little slower and a little deeper. And just begin to feel your breath move in your body. And as you do, that's going to help you to draw your senses inwards. So as you're breathing a little slower, notice how your focus is turning inwards. You're looking in with your inner eye. You're feeling in with your inner feeling, and you're listening in with your inner ear. And then I want you to feel a bit of movement in your navel, a bit of movement in your rib cage, the intercostal muscles, and a bit of movement in your upper chest. On the inhale and the exhale. Don't worry too much about the depth of your breath. Is just feel those three areas move, and some breaths will be deep, others in between, and you'll even have shallow breaths. It doesn't really matter the depth of your breath, is that you feel those three areas move. So you're using your full lung in every breath. Sometimes it's a deep breath, other times it's a shallow breath, everything in between. And in that, you're beginning to connect into your inner body. Now imagine your lungs are a pair of muscles, and then know that your lungs are a pair of muscles. Now what I want you to do is gently sway around your sit bones. Make a small little circular motion on your sit bones. And that lets you begin to feel the engagement of your body, feeling the tone of your body. Now your lungs are muscles. As you sway and you feel that tone, I want you to breathe and I want you to feel the same tone in your lungs. So a little bit of movement to your navel, your rib cage, and your upper chest. On the inhale and the exhale. And then allow yourself to glide in your breath. Nice and fluidly, just glide in your breath. And notice how you begin to glide in your sway. You feel the tone and then you feel the release in your body. And then as you do, is feel the tone in your lungs and have the tone in your lungs mirror the tone in the trunk of your body. Whatever tone you're feeling in your body, mirror it in your lungs. And use your intuition. Whatever you think it is, that's what it is. And that beautiful tone begins to connect you to your inner body and the energetics. Notice how the sensations in your body begin to heighten. And as you breathe, notice that beautiful spaciousness in your navel. And as you move into your rib cage, there's a lovely sense of flowing. And as you move into your upper chest, just come to it with a peaceful completion. And there's a moment of pause. And then you begin to exhale. And again, you're exhaling your navel. Notice the spaciousness. You're flowing in the rib cage, everybody at their own time. And as you exhale to the upper chest, just come to the end of your exhale with a peaceful completion. Now in that, you're going to begin to notice that you're breathing a channel. There's a spaciousness, and there's a flowing spaciousness and a peaceful completion. And at either end of the breath, there's a moment of pause that just opens the channel. And you're flowing into the spaciousness, and you're flowing into the spaciousness to a peaceful completion, moment of pause, and then your breath changes. And you're either inhaling or you're exhaling. So now you're still in that beautiful sway. You're feeling the tone of your body as you sway. You're mirroring that on your inner body with your breath. Notice how your breath and your body are moving at the same pace. And you get to feel these beautiful sensations in the body. But if you have an ache, you might be feeling the ache in the body. Notice as you're swaying, it allows you to stay open to the pleasure or the pain, discomfort of it. That you're gently massaging your body. And you're centered and you're moving around your center of gravity. And in that, you're just moving through all the different sensations in your body. And from there, I'm going to get you to slow your breathing down a little bit more so that as you come to the end of your exhale, I want you to come to it ease. So at the end of the exhale, there's that moment of pause. I want you to stay ever so slightly longer in the pause. Just an extra moment or two. And let yourself naturally breathe when you're ready. When you inhale, navel, ribcage, upper chest, and as you come to the peak of your inhale, slow it down. So there's a moment of pause at the peak of the inhale. And I want you to spend a moment or two longer in the pause at the peak of the inhale. And do that at your own pace now. Come to the pause at the end of the exhale, spend a moment or two longer. Then equally the pause at the peak of the inhale, spend a moment or two longer. Now in that, notice how it increases the heat in the body. As you start to feel the deeper tones and sensations. Notice how all your senses begin to heighten. Your sense of touch, your sense of listening, your sense of seeing, your sense of smell, your sense of taste. All your senses are heightened. And you're just beginning to feel that heat radiate a little more in your body. And just feeling that heat radiate, just feeling the life force radiating, and just feeling it. And gently swaying around the sit bones. That you're perpetually in the spontaneity of the muscles, where they gently tone and they release. And allowing yourself to just feel all the sensations in the body. And you're keeping the body open, you're keeping the body engaged. And you're holding that one central space. And breathing. Now if you notice any aches or discomforts, you might have a foot going a bit numb, or an ache in an ankle, or an ache in a hip, or a lower back. Anywhere at all, if you notice an ache, rather than moving away from it, I want you to gently move towards it, which means I want you to focus on it. I want you to breathe slower and deeper. I want you to gently sway and sway ever so more slowly when you come to that ache, and then allow yourself to just gently and softly move into it. And like a massage, feel a bit of pressure as you touch it, and then a release. And every time you sway, when your sway comes around to it, is a little bit of pressure, lets you touch where the ache is, then a release. And you're not going so far in that your body braces, that your body is staying open to it. Your breath is staying open to it. Your awareness is staying open to it. And you're just gently using that sway to just feel all the sensations in your body, whether it's the pleasure or the pain. And that you're gently feeling the pressure, and then you're releasing off like a massage. Now equally, if you feel some part of your body that feels really nice, let's tease that out a little bit more. I want you to spend a couple of more moments breathing into your rib cage. So when you find yourself breathing into your intercostal muscles, is slow it down and breathe a little deeper into your intercostal muscles. It's going to expand your rib cage a little bit more, and that floats your rib cage up, and in that lengthens the lower spine a little bit more. It heightens your energy. You might start to feel a release of energy through your spine. It'll let the shoulders come away from the ears. You might feel a release of energy around the base of the neck, base of the skull, across the top of the shoulders. If you feel a nice sensation in your body, as you sway, I want you to do the same thing. Feel that nice sensation. Feel the pressure as you go into it, and then feel the release. And that you're taking yourself deeper into that nice sensation, and then you're releasing. So whether you're feeling an ache and a pain, or whether you're feeling pleasure, you're treating them both the same. You're holding the space open. You want to feel them. You want to see them. You want to hear them. But at the same time, you're keeping the space open to release them. And in that, you're bringing your life force to them. And you're offering it. You're holding the space open. So whoever comes to the center gets your attention, and gets the heat, gets the warmth. And then it's no different at an emotional or a mental level. Is whatever the thoughts are, normally we'll recognize them as pleasant, unpleasant, positive or negative. So if it's a negative thought, is again, allow the thought in, allow the thought to express itself, look to understand the thought, but when the thought is ready to leave, just let it go. And then the more it comes in, you go a little deeper in, like a massage, and then you let it release. You go a little bit deeper in, you feel a little bit more, and you let it release. And the more times the negative thought comes in, the more you understand it, is you're slowly seeing what you need to see, you're letting go of the hurt, and you're moving into the truth of it. And then you can begin to live the fullness of that. You're breathing it. You're seeing it. You're feeling it. And your mind's eye is that as you look through your life, you can see the truth of what you understood. And you're in the living experience of that. If it's an emotion and you understand positive or negative emotion, if you understand the feel the authenticity of in it, if you feel the truth of it for you, is you're just then in the feeling of that. And you're allowing yourself to be in the living experience of that. Your life force is in the fullness of it. It's authentic and it lifts you. And rather than looking at things as good or bad, or right or wrong, or positive or negative, it's the human experience. And it's the living the fullness of it is where we begin to find that permanent joy, that vibrancy within it. Rather than the struggle, we come into the connection. We let it go, the hurt go. And we need to understand the hurt first to let it go. Remember the conversation about understanding pain so that we cannot be afraid of it, that we cannot resist it, that we can just be in it and release it. Very powerful. And it's very simply done by just getting into those gentle aches and pains of your body and learning how to release them. That same process is coming into the aches and pains at an emotional level and learning how to release them. Those aches and pains at a mental level is learning how to release them. So when you go into the rooms of your life, people in your life, the situations in your life, is we're not in the survival of them, but we can be in the living of them. That you walk in as a living being. You engage with them as a living experience rather than as a survival experience. It's very different. So now, notice how soothing that subtle motion is. Notice how soothing your breath is. Notice how soothing it is at a mental level. Your awareness begins to soften out. You get that beautiful spatial awareness. And then just feeling the heightened state of sensation. Just for a few minutes. I want you to just keep gently swaying into the lovely wave effect of your breath. And just enjoy the warmth of your own body. Just for a few more minutes. Just continue to gently sway and breathe. And notice how calm everything gets. And then notice the intimacy of your experience. That you're really connecting into yourself. Just the intimacy of just feeling itself. Feeling the breath, feeling the body, feeling your awareness, and feeling your life force within. Next week, what we're going to do is we're going to build on that, come back into that beautiful connection, develop on the intimacy, and then we're going to begin to look at the pleasure of things and the peaks of pleasure. So again, how do you experience a pleasant sensation? How do you experience a bit more bliss and euphoria? How do you tap into those higher states of experience as well? Or for the next while is think about with your aches and pains in your body is that gentle swaying motion that just lets you feel them and then move in them like a massage and breathe into them. And once you practice bringing your life force to bear and connecting to the aches and gently massaging your awareness and your life force into them. And like a massage, pressure and then release. So it's a little pressure to connect, micro movements, and then a little bit of release. And that you're figuring out how to release pain. When you can figure out how to release pain, is our life force now has a much clearer channel to move through. And then we'll tease out pleasure a little bit more in the next session. Nice and gently, you can let your eyes open if they're not open already. And thank you very much for today's session. You're going along with it. I'll see you next time.